On Sunday, December 2022, I set off for Vermont to spend Christmas weekend with my family. The thought of being in Vermont during the holidays always brought a sense of warmth and nostalgia. It's a place that truly transforms into a winter wonderland. The snow-covered landscapes and cozy atmosphere made it an ideal setting for festive gatherings. My plan was to arrive on Christmas Day and stay through the weekend, heading back home on Monday morning. Although it was a short visit, the idea of reuniting with loved ones and celebrating together made the trip feel all the more special. The evening before, on Christmas Eve, I had spent time with my girlfriend Kara at her family's annual gathering. Kara and I had been dating for over a year, and though I would have loved for her to join me in Vermont, she had her own family traditions to honor. She had planned to stay with her parents and siblings for the holiday weekend, and we agreed to meet up once I was back in town. As much as I enjoyed her family's company, there was something special about reconnecting with my own family during Christmas, especially since we didn't get to see each other as often as we'd like. Our family gathering in Vermont was small but intimate, as many of our extended relatives were scattered across the East Coast and unable to join us. This year, it was just my parents, my older sister Megan, her boyfriend Josh, my Aunt Linda, my Uncle Mark, and me. Although it wasn't a huge group, it was still wonderful to have everyone together under one roof. My parents' house, nestled on the outskirts of a quiet town, was spacious and warm, with enough room for all of us to stay comfortably. Its classic New England architecture, with large windows overlooking snow-covered pine trees, created the perfect holiday setting. One of our cherished family traditions was to gather in the living room after dinner to watch a Christmas movie by the crackling fireplace. It was something we had done for as long as I could remember, and it always filled the house with laughter and holiday cheer. This year, my dad chose Bad Santa, one of his favorite comedies, which added a humorous twist to the festive night. After the movie, we indulged in dessert-generous slices of pumpkin pie topped with scoops of vanilla ice cream before moving on to a few rounds of our favorite card games. The atmosphere was lively and filled with warmth. A perfect encapsulation of what Christmas was all about. It was around 11 p.m. when everyone began settling into their sleeping arrangements. Megan and Josh took one of the spare bedrooms, while Linda and Mark took the other. I didn't mind sleeping on the pull-out couch in the living room. It was cozy by the fireplace and Christmas tree, and I enjoyed the peaceful atmosphere. I left the TV on as I was dozing off, enjoying the flicker of lights from the Christmas tree. When I felt myself slipping into sleep, I turned off the TV and tree lights, leaving only the dying embers of the fire to faintly illuminate the room. Eventually, the fire went out entirely, and the room was plunged into darkness as I drifted off into a dream. In my dream, it was still Christmas, but we weren't at my parents' house. Instead, we were at my uncle's home, surrounded by more family members, including my cousin Rachel and my Aunt Melissa. We were all sitting at the dinner table when, suddenly, the dream took a disturbing turn. Everyone fell silent and turned to look at me. Then, in a grave tone, my Aunt Melissa said, "There's someone in the house. Wake up." I woke up with a jolt, my heart racing. Something about the way the dream ended felt deeply unsettling. Sitting up on the pull-out couch, I scanned the dark room. The tall ceilings of the living room, which usually felt open and inviting, now made me feel exposed and vulnerable. I was lying on the pull-out couch, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling left by the strange dream I had just woken from. The dream's warning delivered by my Aunt Maria, though she wasn't even present in real life, felt eerily vivid and hard to dismiss. My heart was still racing as I tried to reassure myself it was nothing more than a bad dream. I took a few deep breaths, the stillness of the living room offering a temporary sense of calm. The house was so quiet that I could hear the faint crackle of the last embers in the fireplace. But just as I was starting to relax, a sound disrupted the silence, a faint creak of a floorboard near the area where the kitchen met the living room. My heart skipped a beat as my eyes darted to the source of the noise. I squinted into the darkness, barely able to make out the shapes of furniture and doorways in the faint light coming from the dying fire. That was when I saw a shadowy figure standing motionless in the kitchen doorway. At first, I thought my eyes might be playing tricks on me, a leftover effect of my dream. But the figure remained still, and the longer I stared, the more certain I became that someone was there. A cold chill ran down my spine. My voice trembled as I mustered the courage to call out, "Is someone there?" The room remained silent, no one answered my call. Yet the figure didn't move or vanish, which only heightened my unease. I sat up straighter, straining to make out any details in the darkness. My breathing grew heavier as I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the light or a piece of furniture casting an unusual shadow. But then, to my horror, the shadow moved. It shifted and took a step forward, its motion confirming what I had feared most. This wasn't my imagination. It was a person. "Who is that?" I called out louder this time, my voice laced with panic. But whoever it was didn't respond. Instead, the figure turned without a word and began walking toward the back door. My heart was pounding in my chest as I listened to the unmistakable sound of the door opening and then closing softly behind them. The quiet click of the latch felt deafening in the stillness of the house, and I realized that whoever had been standing there was now outside. A wave of panic surged through me as I scrambled off the couch and began shouting for my family. Dad, Mark, Megan, Josh. Someone. My voice echoed through the house, and within moments, the sound of hurried footsteps filled the hallways. My dad, my uncle Mark, my sister Megan, and her boyfriend Josh all came rushing into the living room, their faces etched with concern. I quickly explained what I had seen, recounting every detail: the shadowy figure, the movement, and the sound of the back door closing. As I spoke, their expressions shifted from confusion to alarm as it became clear that the intruder wasn't any of them. Without hesitation, the men in the family sprang into action. My dad and Mark grabbed their coats and shoes, and Josh followed suit. They were determined to investigate, even though the thought of stepping outside into the freezing December night was daunting. I grabbed a flashlight and handed it to them as they stepped out into the backyard, where the fresh snow lay undisturbed except for a set of footprints. The tracks were distinct, leading from the back door and disappearing into the woods that bordered the property. The dense, dark forest loomed ahead, its shadows seeming to stretch and shift in the faint light of the moon. None of us were eager to follow the tracks into the woods at that hour, especially given the unnerving circumstances. Instead, we decided to call the police. While waiting for them to arrive, I joined Josh in the backyard, nervously shining the flashlight toward the edge of the woods. The thought that someone could be out there, hidden in the darkness and possibly watching us, sent a shiver down my spine. Inside the house, my dad and Mark checked for signs of theft, scanning the rooms to see if anything had been taken or disturbed. Strangely, nothing seemed to be missing. The Christmas presents under the tree were untouched, and my parents didn't leave cash or jewelry lying around. It was baffling and even more unsettling to think that someone had entered the house but hadn't taken anything. When the police arrived, they followed the footprints as far as they could into the woods, but the trail eventually became too difficult to track. They hadn't received any other calls about break-ins that night, and no reports of similar incidents appeared in the news the following day. Perhaps it was just a random occurrence, a thief startled into fleeing upon realizing the house wasn't empty. Or maybe their purpose was something far more sinister. Whatever the reason, the entire experience left me deeply unsettled. The following night, I found myself struggling to sleep in the same living room. The cozy atmosphere I had once loved, the warmth of the fireplace, the glow of the Christmas tree now felt tainted, as if the room carried the weight of the previous night's fear. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see the shadowy figure standing silently in the kitchen doorway, a dark and imposing presence that refused to fade from my memory. Even now, the events of that Christmas night remain vivid and chilling, a reminder of how fragile our sense of security truly is. There's something deeply unsettling about realizing that the sanctuary you call home can so easily be violated, leaving you vulnerable in the very place you should feel safest. Even in moments of joy and comfort, it's important to stay vigilant and aware of your surroundings. The security of a home is not just in its walls, but in the precautions we take to protect it. Trust your instincts, and remember that safety should never be taken for granted, even during the most cherished times.